To the wonderful organizers of this incredible event. I was privileged to be here 3 years ago, and I'm delighted to be back. My friend Mustafa, Sarah, so many wonderful people here who make this very important event possible. I wear two hats, really. My passion and my vocation is to work with His Holiness the Dalai Lama and to serve him, and my profession is in the media. I manage a small not-for-profit called the Public Service Broadcasting Trust. We support the production, as commissioning editor and mentor, of 52 independent documentary films a year. We've been doing this for over a decade. We have supported 650 independent documentary films. Our films win huge, huge critical acclaim. 2/3 of them are made by starting out filmmakers, 50% by women. For every film we make, we get 2 film festival selections. For every 2.5 films, 2-point-something films, we win an award. Our films are made at very modest budgets of less than $10,000 each. But despite this recognition, we find very little public space for the films to be seen. We're often asked how we manage such a high success rate of conversion of films made by young people to film festival selections and awards. To be true to our faith, we do not work with anger or malice. We do not make films idly. We do not work merely to excite passion. The viewer can no longer respond in the manner that he does to public media, and there's no sense of the restraint we have to exercise from week to week in choice of subjects and our vocabulary. It is a training for all of us. It enables us to peek into ourselves and to make discoveries of our weaknesses. Often our vanity dictates a smart expression or an exciting visual, and anger, a harsh objective. It is a terrible ordeal, but a fine exercise to remove these weeds. These are not my words. This is a paraphrase of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was, of course, an activist, an apostle for nonviolent peace. But he was also associated with 6 publications, and 2 of which he was editor, Young India and Harijan. And I think that in revisioning these lines to share with our community of filmmakers, there is a very important lesson for journalism, and that is the integrity and the authenticity of the communicator. That is the ultimate truth and the ultimate reality that makes for effective, powerful communication. There are many influential voices in the media who embody these aspirations. We're privileged to have some of them on the stage. And for those of you who are here for the duration of the conference, there are people like Pico Iyer, Vandana Shiva, and several others who I don't personally know, but would like to celebrate. But these individual voices who have the courage and the confidence to stand up and articulate their visions are overwhelmed by the cacophony of the mass media and its impact on global consciousness. It has been our aspiration at this tiny NGO that I manage to try and understand what are the obstacles that we confront that keep our critically acclaimed content from actually being received, processed, and seen and responded to. I think we have underestimated the power of the corporation and the power of governments to influence and manage media. Commercially driven content across the board, whether it is excluding the marginalized in South Africa, or the disenfranchised and disadvantaged poor in India, is because commercially driven media does not deliver content. It delivers eyeballs to advertisers. And inherent in that model is the exclusion of people who are not consumers of goods and services or the points of view, including encouraging consumerism, that do not interest or will discourage advertisers from placing advertisements in those newspapers. We have had horrifying experiences. We made a film on the pesticides in Coca-Cola as marketed in India. It was horrifying that India, well, we now think it's more a developed country than a developing one, that the groundwater that Coca-Cola was sourcing had pesticides in it, and there were different standards that were being applied to Coca-Cola marketed in the United States or being marketed in India, for example. Now, Coca-Cola, as being one of the largest advertisers, certainly in India, and I would imagine in this country, were able to exclude our film from dissemination, and when screened, were able to pack the audience with people who sought to disrupt the presentation. We did another film on paid news, on the manner in which political parties and governments are able, through the use of advertising space, to influence opinion, or for that matter, the pharmaceutical industry that will conceal or hide or encourage stories to be wished away. I mean, how widely has it been reported in the United States of the implications and the impact of Johnson's baby powder on cervical cancer? Where is that story? How many of us have followed the story of Volkswagen and the way, sort of the epitome of capitalist success and credibility, and their fixing of the software in their cars so that they can get away with meeting the United States emission standards? So these are some of the kinds of obstacles that we confront. The internet was held up as this great possibility of democratizing the media. Quite apart from the challenges of access that large communities have, again, the disenfranchised and disadvantaged who cannot afford internet, including in this country, internet penetration in the United States around 70–75%. The people who actually need that kind of access. I don't know how widely it's been reported about the algorithms that Google will use to prioritize news, that how you can go onto a website for $100, ensure that your website will get 30,000 hits. We had a failed initiative, thank God, of Facebook wanting to come into India and riding on the backs of internet service providers and offering a free Facebook facility along with free internet access. So obviously, the advertising and agendas that Facebook wished to promote could then be presented. So I think we need to be mindful as consumers of media that not merely is the credibility and authenticity of the journalist who originates the material frequently in question, but the entire production and dissemination of news is challenged at the very least. And what is the solution to this? Because I think many journalists for whom journalism is a job after all, and Gandhi says somewhere that the sole aim of journalism should be service. The newspaper is a great power. But just as an unchained torrent of water submerges whole countrysides and devastates crops, even so an uncontrolled pen serves but to destroy. If the control is from without, it proves more poisonous than want of control. It can only be profitable when the control is from within. There are certain spheres of work, he says, which are of such consequence and have such a bearing on public welfare that to undertake them for earning one's livelihood will defeat the primary aim behind them. Of course, that is, one would argue, a utopian idealism. But then so is, in many ways, the idea of nonviolence that we are here to celebrate. Because the essence of nonviolence is internal transformation, is internal disarmament before we can go out into the larger field of action. And somewhere, every one of us who engages in journalism in some measure or the other will have to engage with our conscience. And as consumers of the media, it is very difficult in terms of the choices that are available to us. We often complain about, this program or that program for its explicit sexuality or for its excessive violence. But we all do have an option as powerful as the vote in a democracy, and that is the switch off button. We all have that opportunity to use it and to send out a message, no matter how small, which will, from a million different centers of energy and daring, come together, and I believe can sweep away in many of the cobwebs that clutter the media space. And that is the switch off button. Let's use it. Thank you.